A very warm welcome to our MARELEC live event with the intriguing topic: how can we increase your profit using a MARELEC PORTIO portion cutter? My name is Tom de Waele. I joined MARELEC 9 years ago as Sales and Business Development Manager, and it is a real pleasure to be your host today. Now, what do we have on the agenda for you? For those who don't know MARELEC yet, I will start with a short introduction of the company. Now, the title of the event says PORTIO, and this will be the main focus of this presentation. The purpose is that after we briefly explain the principles of the machine, we'll take you through more detailed applications and we will calculate the return on investment for each of those applications. Now, the key feature of a PORTIO is to cut fresh products to fixed weights. And you will see multiple applications, whether you're processing for the retail or for the food service, you will recognize the applications, and our goal is that we will calculate the return on investment for each of those. And we will show you how you can increase your profit when using a MARELEC PORTIO when you're cutting fixed weight products for your customers. At the end of the day, it all comes down to increasing yields, reducing giveaway, higher capacities with less labor. During the presentation, you will have the possibility to send in your questions through the chat box. At the end of the session, we'll have a Q&A where we will gladly reply to your queries or doubts. But first, who is MARELEC? MARELEC started in 1983 with solutions for the fishing and marine industry. And actually that explains the name. MARELEC is a combination of marine and electronics. MARELEC. We are based in Newport at the coast of Belgium. Now, MARELEC has been well respected and well known from the beginning for designing and manufacturing machines which reply to the specific requirements of the customers. Now, today, MARELEC is specialized in high-tech and innovative solutions for weighing and grading and portioning of meat, fish, or poultry. And we are creating machines that have an added value for the food processors worldwide. We are a team of 104 colleagues, of which 35 engineers, 35 people in research and development. And this is important because we control the whole process. We do everything from the mechanical design, the electrics, the electronic boards, all the way up to the software. And we also produce the machines here in our factory in Newport. 95% of what we produce is exported, and that results that we have over 7,000 systems operational in 65 countries. Let's take a look at the company video. Now I gladly introduce Matthias de Wever, who is joining us directly from our demo room. Matthias joined MARELEC 10 years ago as service engineer, but quickly moved on to the sales department, where he is now active as area sales manager. Matthias, the first question I have for you: how can a machine know where it has to cut to get to a portion of fixed weight?
Well, Tom, our portion cutters are using a state-of-the-art vision system, which will generate a 3D scan of the whole product. So it's a combination of a laser line and a camera, which will make sure we can do this. So as you can see behind me, the laser line will deform around the product, and then the camera will detect how this product will look like. So after we know exactly the shape and the volume of the products, we also need to know the density to make sure we can cut by weight. The density is the volume to weight ratio, and it's different for each type of primal. For example, deboned leg meat has more fat into it. Fat is lighter compared to meat, so this density will be lower, for example. So as you can see on the screen here, the portion cutter will visualize the scan after it's made, and it will show you how it will portion the product. An operator has to define then which type of cuts he wants, so you can portion as well on weight, length, as a combination of both. So after the operator defined how the product needs to be portioned, you will actually see on the screen how the portion cutter will cut it. So after it is shown and after it knows how to cut it, it will pass the signal to the knife, and then the knife will actually portion the products as you can see it on the screen.
The machine behind you, is that a specific machine for poultry products?
Well, the machine behind me today is the Porsche 1 DAP. So D stands for double lane. So this machine has 2 times an infeed belt, 2 times a knife, which makes sure that you can cut double of the capacity on pretty much the same footprint like a single line. So mainly for poultry, we see that a lot of customers are investing in double lanes because this gives them a higher capacity on a smaller footprint. Also, this system can portion at an angle. You actually have 5 different angles which you can set. And portioning at an angle is often done when you're working with chicken fillets. If you cut it at an angle, you will see that the end product after portioning it will have a more natural shape, the teardrop shape as we all know it, and it will also have a larger plate coverage.
We see the dual lane behind you. Are there other machines in the MARELEC range of products which are specifically designed for portioning poultry applications?
Yes, we have about 5 standard models which we often sell to poultry processors. I explained already that this is a double lane version, so we have exactly the same model in the single lane version. Also, it's possible to have this machine without the option to cut at an angle. So depending on the application, we will select if it's necessary to have that angle option or not. And depending on the capacity, we will see if a double lane is required or not. Also for applications such as turkey fillets, where the products are larger, we have machines with wider belts available.
The Porsche as it stands here, is that a standard model or is it equipped with options which are recommended for poultry applications?
Well, the model behind me has the option of the product holder. So the product holder will fixate the products on the infeed side while the knife is portioning them, which will give you a more accurate cut in the end. Also, we have options such as trim removal. We can add a grater behind the portion cutters to separate the smaller products and the larger products if you're cutting conditionally. All of that is available as well. Also, we have a software package, Matrix P, which stands for Matrix Porsio, which can generate production reports. On these production reports, you can see the volume or the capacity you've been processing on a specific time slot, and you can also see your yield and all the numbers you want to get out of your production.
Thank you, Matthias. Please join me in our studio and we'll have a closer look at the applications and we'll do some calculations on return on investment so we can prove the increased profit when using a MARELEC PORTIO for cutting fixed weight poultry products.
On my way, Tom.
Welcome to the MARELEC Live studio, Matthias. Now that we understand the working principles of the PORTIO, comes the main question of today. How can this technology help our customers to increase their profits?
Yeah, well, how our portion cutter will increase the profit will depend on the application we're looking at. So for today, we prepared 4 applications. We'll have a look at the payback and see how our machines can create a certain return on investment. So first of all, we'll have a look at the fixed weight fillets. So in the case you're portioning down to a target weight, you end up with a fixed weight portion, and that will be the first application. Secondly, we'll see how our machine can pay itself back for the strips, fixed weight strips, and then cubes out of the chicken fillets, and then cubes out of leg meat will be the last application we'll have a look at. Okay. So starting with the fixed weight fillets. First of all, the reason a lot of our customers want to downsize the fillets is because they generally became too large for the end consumer market. Reason for that is that it's more efficient to slaughter and cut up larger birds, but then some of the poultry parts will get too large, and chicken fillets are one of those examples.
Yeah. So actually we see here on one hand the retail, the supermarket packages, but on the other hand we also see the food service. So we are targeting both industries.
Yep, that's correct. As you said, on top you can see a typical retail package. Also in a supermarket, customers are not likely to buy a large chicken breast of, let's say, 300 gram. So a lot of processors will actually cut them down to have nicer, smaller portions. You also know where you get the question, chicken or pasta. So also in the airline, also in the airline industry, and also restaurants, all these catering businesses as well. So everything under food service will require fixed weight portions as well. If you're in that airplane, it's not nice to see that your neighbor gets a larger portion compared to yourself. So.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, how do we cut fixed weight portions out of a fillet?
Yeah. Well, I explained part of the principle back at the demo room. So first of all, to create those fixed weight portions, we will often cut at an angle. As you can see on figure 1 here, I've showed you in the demo room that we can set the knife at 5 angles. And depending on how you want your product to look like, you can choose one of those. So the reason why we often portion at an angle is to increase the plate coverage. So if you cut the front part, the shoulder part of the fillet away at an angle, the end product will have a larger plate coverage. Also, the presentation will still be good. It will still have the teardrop shape, as you can see on figure 1 here. Another way to do it is to cut the last part away from the fillet, the side part, as you can see it on figure 2 here. In that case, you have as well a fixed weight portion and a strip, and that strip can be sold as a premium product as well. If you have a really large chicken breast where you can't cut strips out of the side, or where the trim would be too large, it's also an option to portion it in half. So this is something we see very often when we look at the larger sizes of chicken breast.
And then the main question, which will come back several times in this event, is what is the payback for our customers when they are using a MARELEC PORTIO to downsize chicken fillets?
Yeah. Well, the payback depends on what you compare to. So first of all, if you look at manual labor, that's what we'll compare our portioning system to for this case. So looking at manual labor, you have a capacity of about 150 kilo per hour. Compared to with a portion cutter, you can portion 500 kilo per hour per operator. Also, you'll see that you have a yield increase. The reason for that is if you ask an operator to portion to a certain target weight, he will very often portion a little bit heavier. Then he will put it on a weighing scale and slice off a small piece again, which is a small trim and which isn't as valuable as a big chunk that our portioning system would cut off.
Yeah. Now, if we take a typical example from the field, can we put some real numbers on the saving?
Yeah. Well, we worked out an example where a customer would portion 8 tons per day. So if you want to do this manually, you would require 7 operators to do that volume. If you use a portion cutter, you can do this with 2 operators. So that will give you a labor saving of €800 per day if we calculate with an average weight in Western and Central Europe. I also told you that there will be a certain yield saving because our portion cutter will cut immediately to the right weight. And that yield saver of 2% will actually give you extra earning of €320 per day as well. The reason for that is that we'll have 2% extra premium product compared to trim. And the price difference we calculated between both was €2 for this example.
Yeah, but I can imagine to get your 2% yield that you obviously a lot depends on the quality of the operators.
Yeah. That's correct, but if you would ask an operator to portion very accurate with almost no overweight, he might have to weigh the fillet 2 or 3 times again, which will then result in extra labor. Yeah. So let's say the overall saving you'll have, taking both labor and yield into account, would remain the same. So the machine you would need to portion that 8 tons per day would be a single lane portion cutter, which can cut at an angle as well. So the rough investment cost for this machine is around €150,000. So the payback time would actually be under 7 months, taking both the labor and the yield savings into account.
Okay, 7 months is a very short payback. Do we see similar results when we are cutting strips?
Well, the payback time is even shorter when cutting strips, but we'll come back to that later on. So first of all, the strips we're speaking about here are fixed weight strips. Often this will be the raw material for the chicken fingers, for example, or the strips on ready-to-eat meals. The reason that they have to be fixed weight is the same as with the fixed weight portions that we saw earlier. If you go to a fast food restaurant, everybody wants to get the same amount of strips, and they also want to get the same portion size in total, so the same weight. Yeah. We don't want to be the reason of any bar fights. So,
No, we always try to avoid fights as much as we can, definitely. Now, can strips be portioned on the same machine that we saw where we're cutting the fillets to fixed weight portions?
Yeah, you can portion the strips on the same machine, although the options you would need will vary per application. You saw in the demo room that we had an automatic product holder on the machine. Those are the 2 belts which will keep the product in place while we are cutting it. Well, this will be useful for the strips to make sure we cut them accurately. Secondly, it's really important that the fillets are fed with the proper orientation into the portion cutter. As you can see on figure 1 here, we will use 100% of the product as a usable strip. And to obtain that, the dimensions of every strip need to be correct. And to make sure that the dimensions are correct, you need to feed in with the proper orientation. So we actually developed a laser system, which will put a line on the infeed belt, which will show the operator how he needs to feed the fillet. So this is one way to cut the fillets. On the other hand, you can also do a combination of several applications. So in this case, a fixed weight portion together with strips. In this case, you would actually use 100% of the fillet as a prime product without having any trims.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so here again the same question. Where is the payback if one of our customers is using a Portio to cut strips?
Well, for the fixed weight strips, we'll compare ourselves both to manual labor and the strip cutter. So starting with the manual labor, if you would cut these fixed weight strips with an operator, we can see that the average capacity per operator would be about 100 kilo per hour. While if you use our portioning system, that is about 1 ton per hour. So you save a lot on labor there. Also on yield, you can see that there's an increase of about 4%. And the reason for this is that our portion cutter will actually scan the whole chicken fillet. It will know the weight. Usually the operator will give a certain range on the target weight, so it can actually portion the whole fillet into usable strips. While an operator will often start to cut 40 gram, and then in the end a small piece is left, which means that the yield will be lower. Mm-hmm. If we compare ourselves to a strip cutter, you can see that the labor is the same. For both of the machines, you need to feed in the chicken fillet one time, so the labor cost will be the same. But the yield is 9% higher on our portion cutter. The reason that there's such a large difference is that the strip cutter will have discs at a fixed position. So every time on the outside of the fillets, you will have a small strip at the start and at the end. Yeah. That's why the yield will be lower.
Yeah. So we saw when we were looking on the first application on the fillets, the downsizing fillets, we did see a big saving on labor. This is not the case here, but we are comparing the yield from a strip cutter to a Portio. Do we have some numbers to confirm that statement on payback on yields?
Yep. Well, we'll compare ourselves to the strip cutter. So you can see that we based it on a volume of 15 tons per day. So as well for the strip cutter and the Portio, you would require 2 operators to portion this. So the labor will be the same, which means there's no labor savings. The yield will be about 9% higher though. So if you calculate again with a price difference of €2 between the strips and the trim, then that will come down to a saving of €2,700 per day.
Okay.
So the machine we would use to portion that 15 ton in one shift would be a double lane cutter, the one we saw in the demo room earlier. That's our Portio 1 DAP. So the rough budget cost for this machine is around €230,000. So the actual payback time would be under 5 months in this case, just because of the 9% yield increase.
Well, that's really impressive numbers, and I also think that the quality of your strip is better, higher quality when it is cut on a portion cutter compared to a strip cutter.
Yep, indeed, it will be more consistent in shape, first of all. And secondly, of course, the weight will be more accurate as well if you compare strip to strip. Also an issue we often see if you're portioning on a strip cutter is when the chicken breasts are larger, you will actually get on an average heavier strips compared to having smaller chicken breast. While with us the average weight will always be the same and it will be predictable.
Yeah. And if based upon these volumes, if we do the exercise, what you can save on labor, can we put some numbers on that?
Yeah. Well, if you would compare the same volume to manual labor, you would see that you save about 15 operators doing this with our portion cutter instead of manually, and that would make the payback time even lower if you calculate the wages of these 15 operators.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. So we covered 2 out of the 4 applications. We had the fixed weight portions, we had the strips, and the third application is the cutting of cubes. But before we start this subject, I kindly invite you to send in your questions in the chat box. We have a Q&A session at the end of the event where we will gladly reply to your questions or your doubts. But let's go back to the third application, the cubes.
Yeah. Well, fixed weight cubes can be found also as well in retail as in food service. For example, skewers can be packed in a tray which is then how you can find them in retail. But also the same skewers can be used for food service. Everybody needs that same portion size. Every skewer needs the same amount of cubes, so that's why we portion them into fixed weight.
Ah, okay, but how do you cut cubes out of a fillet?
Yeah, well, the process is a little bit different to do that, and it exists actually out of two stages, let's say. First of all, we will cut the fillet into strips, and then at the second stage we will cut the strips into cubes. But instead of explaining this on this picture, we prepared a video where we will talk you through the line to process cubes. So you can see here, first of all, the operators loading the chicken fillets on the infeed belt of the first portion cutter. So based on the weight, this portion cutter will decide to cut the chicken fillets into X amount of strips. For example, a larger chicken breast will have more strips into it compared to a smaller chicken breast. You can also see here how we use our automatic product holder to keep the product in place while portioning. So on the outfeed of the first portion cutter, you can find our strip separator, which is a system which will semi-automatically separate the strips prior to going into the second portion cutter. The reason we developed this is to save on labor, because in this case you would need only one operator to correct the positioning of the strip prior going into the second cutter. So you can see the operators correcting that position right here, and then the second lane will cut the strips into fixed weight cubes. Also here, most of the processors would make the choice to portion with a certain tolerance, let's say, on the weight, and that would result in 100% yield, because all of the strip would be cut into cubes. And on the outfeed, you can choose to either go immediately to a process like tumbling or further processing, or you can just run the cubes into a trolley to put them in stock.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Well, that definitely explains the principle, and I'm back with the same question. Where is the payback for somebody who's using a Portio to cut cubes?
Yeah. Well, for the cubes, we'll compare ourselves to both manual labor and to a dicer. So first of all, looking at the manual labor, you can see that the capacity per operator, if you would cut 20 gram cubes, would be around 50 kilo per hour. While if you do it on a portioning system, it will be more or less 300 kilo per hour per operator. So there's a lot of labor saving there, obviously. Secondly, looking at the yield, you can see that the yield from manual labor and from the Portio will be more or less the same. The yield will depend a lot on the specs. If you want to have, let's say, very tight specs on your cubes, then the yield will be lower. But if you would do it manually or with the Portio, it will remain the same. So comparing to a dicer, you can see that actually the labor will be lower on a dicer. You can do 1 ton per hour per operator instead of the 300 kilo on our system. But then the yield will be 6% higher though. The reason for that is that the dicer will use a grit where it will push the chicken fillet through. And on the sides of that grit, you will have small bits and pieces which will end up as a trim instead of a usable cube.
Now, I'm a little confused here. We need 3 times more labor comparing Portio to a dicer. How can you get your payback if you need 3 times as many people?
Yep. Well, actually, the fact that you'll have a 6% yield increase will overrule the fact that you need more labor. But on the other hand, often you will require less labor after the portioning system compared to the dicer. But I'll come back on that later on. First of all, there's an example here what you would get out of your numbers if you would portion 16 tons per day. So you can see on the dicer we calculated with 2 operators for this volume. On the portion cutter that would be 6 operators in total, because we calculated with 2 shifts for this application. So you would have an extra cost of 640 euro per day. That would be the extra labor cost to have the 4 extra operators here. On the other hand, you have the 6% yield increase, and here we calculated with 3 euro difference between the cubes and the trims, which would give you an increased earning of close to 2,900 euro per day.
Yeah, okay. And what line would we typically use to produce these cubes?
Yep. Well, the line we would recommend is the same one as we saw in the video, for that volume at least. So that's 2 double lane portion cutters in line with each other, and then with the strip separator in between it to save on labor and to have some extra payback out of the line, let's say. So if we compare the payback we saw earlier to the investment cost here, which is roughly 550,000 euro, you can see that that there's a payback time of under 12 months.
Yeah. On this. Okay, perfect. Now you said you will come back on a gain, on a saving on labor cost if there is a further processing of the cubes. Can you talk us through that process?
Yeah. Well, the fact is we have a 6% yield increase on our portion cutter, and that means that with the dicer you would have to sort out 6% of trimmings behind the dicer. So often you see, for example, if the people who have to stick the cubes on the skewers, often you see that they will work slower if the raw material is not that consistent supply to them. We've seen an example out of the field where the customer would save 30% on labor to make the skewers compared to having the product from the dicer.
Oh,
so,
okay.
So that's why you can actually see here that that the labor saving will be neutralized because of that. So you won't have any labor saving, and the total payback time will be even shorter than 12 months for this case.
Perfect. So we have seen three applications on fillets with a very fast payback, and the last one we had prepared was the leg meat, which is my favorite, but that's totally irrelevant here. But I'm sure we can also cut this very efficiently on our portion cutter.
That's correct. A lot of our customers are using our portioning systems daily to cut the leg meat into portions. So the main applications here are downsizing the leg meat. That means downsizing it to a fixed weight, as the first application we saw with fillets. You can also cut the leg meat into strips, you can cut it into cubes, or even a combination of those applications. But the case we will work out today is cutting it into fixed weight cubes. This is an application we've seen for many years in Asia and South America. But nowadays in Europe, also more and more processors are installing leg deboners, and these leg deboners will then make the raw material for our portion cutters.
I'm happy to hear it's coming more and more popular here in Europe as well. I suppose it's the same principle where we are first cutting the strips and then in a second phase the cubes.
Yes, the principle is exactly the same. I will show now in our virtual showroom how a line would work for leg meat. In our virtual showroom you can see several lines in operation on different applications. So first of all, you see that the line is built up out of a single lane portion cutter preparing the strips, and then you see that all of these strips are spread over a twin lane to then cut cubes from them. This is because we're not using the strip separator here for the leg meat. That's why we can have a twin lane cutting these strips coming from a single lane. So,
okay, well, that's a great animation, and actually I invite all our viewers to visit our virtual showroom where you can see all MARELEC lines in operation. You get access to the virtual showroom through our website. I can really recommend the visit. It's worth it. But let's go back to the essence here. Let's talk money. Where is the saving, Matthias?
Yep. Well, for the leg meat or the cubes out of leg meat, we'll compare ourselves to manual labor. Also here, if you're portioning cubes of about 20 gram, as an operator you could do more or less 50 kilo per hour. While using our portioning system you can do 165 kilo per hour per operator. The yield will be slightly lower though using our portioning systems. Reason for this is that we'll have some reject. Some of the cubes might have some fat on it, or there might be some skin loose on them. While if you do it manually, you can see in advance that there's some fat or some skin loose on the product, so you can actually take it into account when portioning the piece.
Yeah. So a 2% worse yield, is it always like that?
Yeah. Well, it's not always 2%. That's only the case if we compare ourselves to a good skilled operator. then you will see that it will be 2%. But again, that's variable depending on which operator you compare it to.
Okay. And then what line and what would be the cost of this line and the payback?
Yeah. Well, we made a case here where we compare ourselves on base of 8 tons per day to this manual labor. So as you can see, you would require 20 operators to do that 8 ton per day, while if you use our portioning system, you would need only 6 operators. So that's a labor saving of 2,240 euro per day if you calculate with, again, the wages in Central and West Europe. But then the yield would go 2% backwards. Yeah. So that would result in an extra cost, let's say, of 320 euro per day. If you calculate again with €2 difference between the cubes and the trims, you get out of it.
And what is the line that we would suggest to do this cubes out of leg meat?
Yeah, well, it's the line that we presented in the virtual showroom. So it consists out of a single lane cutter and a double lane cutter, both. So the rough investment cost would be here 440,000 euro, and this can be paid back in under 12 months as well, having that labor saving that we saw on the previous slide.
Okay, perfect. So I think that covers the four applications that we have seen with the very impressive numbers on payback. Now, these are numbers that we have seen in the field. These are confirmed by field trials or feedback that we got from our customers. But one thing that I think we have to keep in mind is that the cost of raw material will vary country by country. The labor cost will definitely vary country by country. So there has to be some side marks with these numbers.
Yep. That's correct. We had to make some assumptions here. I always told what we based ourselves on, how large the price difference was between the prime product and the trim value. So there are some variables that will be different for other customers. So actually the way we calculate the payback time is usually through our template. So after doing a test, we will actually look at a customer, how much volume they will do of each application. We will see what the yield is, how much we can improve. We will also compare the labor, and then we will calculate the payback time specifically for that customers. Yeah. And also for the viewers today, if they see that they have another labor cost or another price difference between certain materials, they can always contact us and we can work it out specifically for them.
Yeah, because here we are basing ourselves on volumes like 2 tons per day, 3 tons, another 2 tons of the fillets. Obviously, when you don't do the capacities, it will have an influence on your payback time as well.
Yeah. Well, today we had the example where our portion cutters were going to be used close to their maximal capacity. Yeah. Of course, if you use the portion cutter only half a day, then the payback time would be longer. That speaks for itself. Although if you go to a really lower volume, then you could use, for example, a single lane instead of a double lane. So also the investment cost would go down.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much, Matthias, for the clear and detailed information. We will round up with our Q&A after this short video. Welcome back to the studio for the last part of this event, our question and answer time. Thank you for sending in your questions. Unfortunately, we had to do a selection of 5 to remain within the suggested time frame, but those questions that we cannot reply to now, we will reply to you directly. Just for your information, we are proud to share with you that we have viewers today from Finland, South Africa, Spain, Croatia, Poland, Ireland, UK, Lebanon, USA, Germany, Greece, just to name a few. Okay, let's have a look at the questions that came in during the event. The first question, what is the ideal temperature for portioning fillets?
Yeah. Well, the temperature we can handle is about 1 to 7 degrees. In general, it doesn't matter that much how or what the temperature is from the raw material. But if we have to cut down to the minimum thickness we can handle, which is about 10 millimeter on chicken fillets, it's important that the products are as cold as possible. The colder you will get the products, the better the cutting quality will be when cutting those thinner strips. So,
yeah, okay, that's clear. Thank you. How to reduce giveaway? Yep. Interesting question that perfectly actually adds to the yield gain. Here is how can we reduce the giveaway, which will also result in a return on investment.
Yep, exactly. Well, I mentioned in the demo room that you can program a certain target weight and that you can also program the density. So basically the giveaway will depend on the average weight. So the higher the average weight, the more giveaway you will get. So in general, how to reduce your giveaway is by having the right target weight into our machines. We also have the option to work with an in-weigher, which will check weigh the density, and then you will be even more sure that the average weight is always constant and is always correct. But the answer to this question is actually that with your target weight you can reduce your giveaway if it's set up correctly.
Yeah, okay, that explains. Thank you. Next question coming in, how to handle orientation of right and left fillets?
Yeah. Well, for most of the applications, it won't matter if it's a right or a left fillet. If you're just feeding in the fillets perpendicular compared to the belt to cut, for example, the front piece away, then it doesn't matter if it's a left or a right fillet. If you're cutting fixed weight strips, or if you are preparing strips to make cubes in a later stage, then it will often matter. I mentioned we have the option of the laser system on the infeed, which will project the angle where the operator needs to feed the products on. That system will actually project an X, let's say, on the belt. So you can see as well for the left and the right fillets at which angle you should feed them in.
Okay, thank you. Oh, we have somebody producing turkey meat as well. Do you need 3 cameras for cutting turkey?
Yeah. Well, actually a good question, because in the demo room we presented a machine with 1 camera on it per lane, a top camera. So in general, for larger primals, we will often use 3 cameras to scan them more accurate. Turkey fillets is one of those products that we will handle with a 3-camera model. So we didn't mention it as one of our applications here to prove the reduce of or the increased profits at least on, but also on turkey fillets we can do that. In general, we have models with as well the wider belt stand and the 3 cameras, which will guarantee that we can portion the turkey in the most accurate way.
Okay, well, thank you. And I think if we have another question, yeah, I think this will be the last question that we will have for today is how can we test our product on the machine?
Yep. Well, we have a demo center here at our headquarters. That's also where I was presenting the machine from earlier. So in this demo center we can work as well with your product. So if our customers send us their raw material, we can perform tests on it. Sometimes they can come over if that's possible. If not, we can also broadcast a demo, so you can follow live how we portion your products, and we can also have interaction about how they should be portioned, how the portion should look like. so we can have feedback during the session as well if we do it live.
Yeah. Okay, so no limitations for doing demos. Well, thank you very much, Matthias, for the information and answering the questions. I would like to conclude that we are represented in over 40 countries, and should you require further information on what we have gone through today, excuse me, please go to our website to find the exclusive distributor in your country or the contact person within MARELEC. Now, for those viewers who are not joining us tomorrow for the session or the event with focus on red meat, I already wish you a happy and successful new year, and we look forward to welcome you on our next events in the coming year. Take care and bye-bye for now.